Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Ian Rogers. I'm the training manager with the Michigan Small Business Development Center. We're glad to have you with us here today for part of our Bridging the $1 Million Gap series. Today, we're going to be talking about storytelling through digital media. We'd like to go over some administrative items, some frequently asked questions, and make sure that everybody's going to have a nice, smooth webinar experience with us today. Before we start the webinar and before we introduce all of our great panelists and presenters today, I'd like to remind everybody here at the Michigan Small Business Development Center, we take your privacy very seriously. We never share any of your information with any third parties without your express consent. We never require anyone who works with Michigan SBDC for our no-cost one-on-one business consulting or attends any of our business education programs to work with any one particular vendor, product, or service provider in exchange for using SBDC services. This webinar is made available at no cost to Michigan residents through the financial support of Fifth Third Bank. And with us today, one of our guests is Ryan Pearson. Ryan is a business banking relationship manager with Fifth Third Bank. And Ryan, I'd like to say thanks for making the time to be with us today on the webinar, of course, for Fifth Third Bank's financial support of these programs. Ryan, do you want to say hi to the audience, talk a little bit about your role with Fifth Third Bank and this collaboration here between Fifth Third Bank and the SBDC to make these webinars available at no cost?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's Small Business Essentials webinar. As Ian said, my name is Ryan Pearson. I'm a business banking relationship manager with Fifth Third Bank. I've been at the bank here for 9 years, both in this role and as a financial center or branch manager. At Fifth Third, we know that small business is essential to the overall economy and to building personal wealth. So to provide people who want to start businesses with the information they need, help existing businesses continue to grow, Fifth Third and the SBDC have been working together to deliver business educational material across Michigan since 2008 as part of our $32 billion commitment to building stronger communities. Webinars are just one of the ways that we deliver on that commitment, and it's intended to increase access and meet you as a participant where you are in the life cycle of your business. Fifth Third has a complete range of credit and non-credit solutions for small businesses, and we'd be pleased to help you achieve your financial goals. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Ian.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate you making the time to be with us on the webinar today. And as we said, that financial support from Fifth Third Bank to make these webinars available at no cost to Michigan residents. For those in the audience, if you have questions, comments, or thoughts related to business banking, remember we've got Ryan with us on the webinar and we can tee questions up for him as well. We've got some handouts for you. A copy of the slides that we'll be using today, as well as a flyer with all of the upcoming and previous sessions for Bridging the $1 Million Gap. If you have questions, comments, or thoughts, please let us know in the questions box. We've got everybody muted just to ensure a very smooth experience with limited interruptions out there. So if you have questions, comments, or thoughts, please let us know. Those questions will come to myself and Christy Cusable as the organizers of today's webinar, and we'll key those up as we go through the webinar and take a look at the end of the webinar as well. We will put some items in the chat box for you too. That's also going to be on the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar screen, or look for that icon in your GoToWebinar app. We'll put some useful links and other info in the webinar as we go along. After the webinar, you'll have an opportunity to fill out a very brief evaluation form, 3 questions of what you thought of today's webinar, if there's any feedback, and what kinds of programs you'd like to see in the future. Your feedback allows us to offer the best possible programs around the state. We are recording today's webinar, so you'll have an email this afternoon. It's going to have a link to view the recording, as well as all of the other resources we discussed today and links to sign up for other SBDC services. So here at the SBDC, we do help entrepreneurs at every stage of their journey. So today's webinar is going to be focused more on our growth clients, existing businesses looking to grow. We also, as you've heard, help out new businesses, individuals looking to start a business for the very first time or start another small business. We do so by providing services such as our no-cost one-on-one business consulting. You'll have a link to sign up for that in the email you receive this afternoon, and you'll hear from some of our business consultants today throughout the webinar. We have business education programs such as this webinar and other in-person workshops when it's safe to do so. And then, of course, we can assist with secondary market research services as well. So in order to provide all these services, we have our teams all around the state, again, helping small businesses get started and grow. We can also assist you if you're exporting products, even if it's just over the border to Canada. If you have an advanced technology you've researched, developed, own intellectual property rights, patents, etc., our tech commercialization team can help you turn that cool new advanced technology into a commercial product. You'll have a link to our full training calendar. Our business education programs aren't limited just to this awesome series and Bridging the $1 Million Gap. We have lots of other great content as well. Check it out, sbdcmichigan.org/training. I'll put a link in the chat box, and you'll have a link in your email this afternoon as well. So before we dive in, final note, we're able to offer all of these services because we're funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration at the federal level, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation at the state level, and all of our local partners around the state, which means our regional offices. And really what all of that government mumbo jumbo means to you is, as you see on the right-hand side of your screen, we cover the entire state of Michigan, every single county. No matter where you are around the state, you're not too far away from your local SBDC regional center or one of our team members working remotely and or virtually throughout the state. So you'll have a link to sign up for that no-cost one-on-one business consulting from an SBDC team member in your area. Keep it in your inbox. It'll be there this afternoon, along with the recording of today's presentation and the materials we use. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up our actual presentation for today. We'll dive in, and I'd like to introduce Bernard Drew, who's going to be facilitating our presentation today, and Christy Cusable from the growth team as well to kick it off.
Well, I tell you what, it's an honor to be here today, and I have to say today's topic is such a bell ringer for most business owners, because candidly, we're in business hopefully to fulfill some sort of aim, some sort of mission, but it takes money to get that done in profitability. And before profitability, boy, somebody had better know you exist, know what you offer, and have a means for coming to engage with your service or your product. You need some marketing. And so we've got, this is our fourth of 6 steps in a 6-part series on bridging the $1 million gap. I'm Bernard Drew. I have a privilege of being part of the growth team at the Small Business Development Center. I'm elated that we have on board with us today our team leader, our trailblazer, Christy Cusable. Christy, why don't you say hello and set the tone for us today?
Thanks, Bernard. Actually, today I get to just attend sort of in the background and be the voice of the audience. So I will be the one behind the scenes reading your questions. Feel free to put any questions you have about the topic in the chat box. I will answer them if I can, but because I'm not a marketing expert, I will probably defer to the 2 panelists. But what I can do then is I will call up your question for them to answer as they go. So we make this a 2-way conversation, not just a lecture, and I'll see you in the chat box. I'm going to go away, but I'll come back if there are questions. So see you on the flip.
Fantastic. Well, it's my pleasure. And I tell you, there's so much that can be covered today, so much that you probably have questions about as a business owner, that I want to leave as much time as possible for you to hear from our guest panelists today. And so as much as we've enjoyed the last 3 sessions, and we've got 2 more coming up after this, today is geared towards marketing. And the whole essence of this series is bridging the $1 million gap, that there is a threshold for your business. Your present threshold might be $300,000. For someone else's threshold right now, it might be that $3 million barrier. But for sake of example, for sake of just the simplicity of capturing the thought, bridging the gap that may be causing you from breaking through, and the fact that part of the missing link is having the right team of advisors around you to help support. And so it's my pleasure to introduce you to 2 very skilled, very competent, I think very compassionate leaders in their fields, Ms. Nerissa Marbury of Epiphany, and Jim McLain, a marketing expert on our growth team at the SBDC. Good morning to you both.
Good afternoon.
Yes, indeed. I tell you what, time is flying here. Ms. Nerissa Marbury, we're elated to have you here. And to whatever extent you desire, feel free to let our participants know a little bit about yourself, how you've evolved in this space of marketing, and a little bit about Epiphany.
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nerissa Marbury, and I bring to this discussion over 20 years of marketing and operating experience. Throughout the years, I've worked with innovative brands, marketing agencies, and startups, led $1 million engagements, and worked with business leaders and government officials around the globe. My company, as Bernard already mentioned, is Epiphany LLC, and we offer digital marketing and marketing operations consulting to businesses and organizations similar to those in the audience today. And recently, I've taken on an additional role as entrepreneur in residence for the Speak Detroit program at TechTown, which is a nonprofit associated with Wayne State University Research and Technology Park. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that I am a Michigander by birth and a proud alumna of the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, a master's graduate of the VCU Brand Center, and I have also earned the right to use the Chartered Financial Analyst and Project Management Professional designations. So once again, I am Nerissa Marbury, and I am so happy to be here today.
We are absolutely elated to have you here, and I'm excited to hear just your scope of influence continue to expand. And I've known nothing but great results from the people that have had opportunity to work with you in the past. So we're glad that you're here with us today. Along with you today as an expert on our panelists, we're grateful to have Jim McLain here from our SBDC growth team. You bring, with a level of simplicity and modesty, some heavy hitting backgrounds in the area of marketing. Feel free, please, to introduce yourself and let the guests that are here know a little bit more about your background and how you're here to assist with the SBDC.
Thanks, Bernard. I'm Jim McLain, and I'm coming at you live from Petoskey, Michigan. We had a little bit of a frost situation last night, so it's a little chilly here, so I have a sweater on. But my background is pretty varied. I graduated from Western Michigan University with a degree in marketing and moved down to Austin, Texas right after graduation, and went through a sales training program with Xerox Corporation and was with them for 5 years. So I have a really good understanding of the sales cycle. That really set me up for my role in marketing. And about 31 years ago, I moved over to Amway Corporation. It's a big direct seller on the west side of the state. And I was there holding various positions for a number of years, including catalog marketing, brand management, and most recently, digital and social media marketing. I led global projects, global teams, and just had a really great experience there. So I'm really happy to bring that experience to each and every one of you. I joined the SBDC last March as a consultant and worked through the COVID situation the best that we could do to support you during some really troubling times. But then took on a full-time role with the SBDC in November. So it's really a pleasure to be here. And also on a personal note, just love being up here in Northern Michigan. I love to participate in outdoor sports. I love to play around with automobiles and home renovation. So that's who I am, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the audience as well.
Fantastic. Well, we've got some very distinguished and skilled panelists here today. Nerissa, if you would, please tell our guests what it is we can expect to learn and be inspired by today.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim and I plan to focus our conversation on 3 areas: strategy, campaigns, and performance tracking. And as you know, this webinar is just under an hour, so we might end up going a little quickly. However, if anyone in the audience wants to dig a little deeper or have questions, please put them in the chat, and know that Jim and I will make ourselves available either today or through our respective organizations as well. So Jim, you ready to get started?
Let's do it. So, yeah, Ian, you want to advance? So today we're going to be focusing on marketing around telling stories and creating actually new value for some of the things that each and every one of you are doing daily in your businesses. You know, if you think about the evolution of marketing, it's really kind of moved from, you know, the early 1900s when Henry Ford was just really focused on production and standardization of the automobile and really just getting that product to market. And there wasn't really, it was such a new product, and the way that we produce products were so different that there wasn't really a lot of focus on advertising or really getting a marketing message out. But that evolved in the 30s when really we started to shift towards sales, where companies started to look at a more competitive market environment. They looked at more seasonality in their businesses. And if you think about Coca-Cola and some of their classic advertising with the old Santa Clauses, you can see this whole advent of a more sales-focused marketing perspective. And then came truly in the 80s, kind of this whole marketing where Apple kind of brought these new products to life that nobody was really asking for. No one really knew what these were. They were digital products that really address specific consumer needs. I mean, we all had boom boxes, we all had Walkmans, but they brought to a market something totally different and truly disrupted an entire music industry. And that was a huge move, which brings us up to today, where now in the past 20 years, there's been a lot of experience or a lot of focus on relationship marketing. You've heard a lot about life cycle management. Each and every one of us have been involved in some sort of loyalty program. And then also storytelling has been a big part of it. And over the past 2 or 3 years, you hear more and more about storytelling. You know, which kind of brings me to this little graphic that's on the slide on the left-hand side here about the Wolverine state, the state that we all live in, the state that we're doing business in. And if you think about this state, you know, just the features of the state alone, you know, it has 2 peninsulas, has an upper and a lower peninsula. It has 4 Great Lakes, not necessarily Lake Erie, because Lake Erie is not in the state of Michigan. But we also have universities, we have colleges, we have, of course, the automotive manufacturing industry, we have agriculture, a lot of different things. But really, what brought it really to life, if you think about it, is when Tim Allen started to tell stories about the state of Michigan. And it was then, you can click Ian, and you can really tell that he actually brought everything to life around Michigan when he was involved in the Pure Michigan campaign. And that campaign really started to touch on the emotional aspects of Michigan. It reached back pretty much in every one of our childhood experiences that may live still in Michigan or may have left Michigan or visited at some point. And they remember the sunsets. They remember those really quaint little towns. They remember the lakes. They remember their experiences on the water. And really that one campaign brought in 5.8 million visits in 2019 and created $2.3 billion in revenue. And that campaign was phenomenal. It's still being played today. It's been over 10 years. It took a little hiatus for a while, but it's definitely back because the value was there. And even, you know, you talk about the value, and a lot of times you'll have business owners or leaders in businesses talk about the ROI of marketing. And the Pure Michigan campaign pretty much netted out for every dollar that they invested in that campaign, it produced about $8.79 in return. So this was a phenomenal story that the state of Michigan told about their tourism industry. And the really compelling fact about that, it was a simple story, a super simple story about just getting away and relaxing. And so I think the really core message about this particular story that was told about Michigan is it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be really, you know, super hard to tell this story. It just has to connect with a group of people. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We'll kind of give you some fundamentals on how to create something like this. And it doesn't happen by accident, and we'll get into how to do that next.
Well, you're setting an amazing tone and a backdrop here, and I know that Nerissa's going to chime in, but I have to say I'm just inspired just to understand that there's more than just the technical engagement of, all right, let me hit my checklist. I have a product, put it out there, people are going to come. Okay, I run a sale, people are going to come. Or I have a special in the store, people are, there's more to it. That the essence of storytelling and connecting, engaging with people creates a whole nother pathway and pipeline. You spoke about the metrics that $8.79 generated on each dollar that was invested on that campaign. You know, that makes it a win. And so with that being said, I know that there's so much more to share today. Nerissa, please continue to just bring some insight to us today.
Yeah, so as Jim and Bernard were already mentioning, it starts with a strategy. And this is where, from an online or digital marketing perspective, especially more than now, is really important for your business to be online and to be engaging with your customers online. And so that strategy has to have a digital focus in mind. Now, of course, the marketplace is extremely crowded and the customers have different pathways to reach your business. And having a set strategy that encompasses your objectives, your goals, understanding who your audience is of utmost importance. That way you can be sure to communicate with them.
Yeah, and let me just add, we talk to a lot of business owners over the course of our weeks, over the course of our days. It seems like we do this wall to wall, during the days. But the one thing that comes to mind is each business owner is wearing several hats. And they are being bombarded with opportunities that are hitting them each hour, by each employee, by each customer. And really, when you think about setting a strategy, it really gives you a direction, it gives you a sense of focus and an ending point. I'm not saying that the strategy has to be firm, because I think all strategies should be dynamic. But one thing that the strategy does is it gives a business owner a moment to pause and to reflect on where he or she is going, and to say no to certain things. And the power to say no without having to lose something is really important, because that strategy empowers you to really go after what it is that you want to create. So I think it's a really important thing to set that strategy. And also, I think strategies, if they're executed well, it is going to really save you time, because you have a plan. It's going to save you money, because you're only going to invest in things that are going to actually drive towards your business objectives. And it's really going to save your team's efforts, because they're going to be focused. So this is a really important piece to start with.
Yeah, Jim is absolutely correct. Strategy is all about choices that a business owner needs to make. And based on those choices, it'll be easier for you to say, yes, this is the path that we need to take, or no, we're headed in the wrong direction because it doesn't fit or stay in line with our strategy.
And then longer term, I think as that strategy evolves, when you do go and think about exit plans, I mean, when you have a really strong foundational strategy, it does start to equate to really enhancing the overall value of that business. So it's a really important piece to start with.
Simplicity, what I'm hearing right now, I'm hearing the power of not only generating more sales, I'm hearing the potential to reduce unnecessary wasted and overexerted energy internally on projects that may not be fruitful. And if I'm not mistaken, Jim, I'm hearing you even indicating some of the intrinsic benefits of having a better harness on your digital storytelling, your strategy. It even adds value to your business. At some point, you may want to sell your business, and to be able to give a quantifiable strategy and how it's worked over time definitely becomes an added selling point. So again, I'm very much intrigued with what you're sharing thus far. I know Nerissa, you've got some more in regards to strategy. Please keep this thing flowing.
Yes, so at least when you're thinking about strategy, there's a couple of components that Jim has alluded to. Some of the choices you have to decide is, who are you marketing to? You have to decide what goals that particular strategy is focused on. What are your objectives? What are you trying to achieve? When you have your goals, your target audience, then it goes into looking how and where you can find that particular customer at. And the slide that's up there right now is talking about how taking the components of a strategy, the goals, the target audience, and then the channels that particular audience, I always like to say it's like a playground or a sandbox that your customers are playing in. You have to go find where they are. It's those first three circles that I see as really encapsulating what your business or your marketing strategy will be. And once you know what those goals, the audience, and the channels are, then you can go into creating the campaigns that executes on that strategy. But before I go any further, I wanted to see if Jim had anything to say about the first half of the circle.
Interesting. I think even Christy may have a question from the audience.
Christy, is there some input from the audience?
Yes, a very good point. Nerissa, you started out somewhere that I love to start, and this is sort of a quiz, and this is a great time, I think, to go down this rabbit hole. Is you said you have to know who you're selling to. What if I'm selling to everyone?
You can sell to everyone, which is fine, but you still need to know who everyone is. You need to know where that everyone lives, where that everyone shops, where that everyone can be. Because when you're just shooting out your brand messaging or your business ideas to the world, nobody knows that you're really directing that message to them. So this is where, and just for the record, I would never advise anyone to market to everyone, but I'm just addressing the question and trying to express that it's really important that even if you feel everyone is your audience, that you still need to personalize it. You still need to make a connection between the individuals that fall within that audience so that they know that you're talking to them and that your product or service is for them.
I love that, because I tell people, unless you're Oreo, Nabisco, and you're putting them cookies in the center aisle at Myers, you're not selling to everyone. You literally there's a time and a place and a person and a geographic scope. Like you said, oftentimes the identity of the person who's going to be the buyer, as opposed to sometimes the user, the parent for the child, you're selling to the parent or something they're going to buy for the child. So you really do have to understand that who is your buyer, right?
Yeah.
That.
I think that like Seth Godin, I think, said it best. And he said, do work that matters for people who care. And if you really think about that, it narrows your audience, because the work that you do is something that you're passionate about. And you want to find those people that care about what you're passionate about, or the other way around, that if they're passionate about it, you care about them. So to go to everyone, I think that is, personally, I think that's a slippery slope for smaller businesses who are starting out, especially with limited resources. I think it's easier to sell to a narrower, profitable group of people and grow from there. And go ahead, Bernard.
I was just going to add in that I actually just watched an interview, which I don't normally just sit and watch YouTube interviews, but with a music artist that's recently had a rise. And he said, I took note, because he's saying it's amazing. I'm on a first name basis with Beyonce now, and I deal with this person. And what he said was this: I'm in the Houston area, and his name is Toby Wigway. And he said, I have a very niche market of person that my music is geared towards. And I know if I serve them well, they will be satisfied. And if it happens to shift over to someone else's niche and they like it too, great. But this is who I make music for. And he's been so focused on that very unique, narrow niche has created a level of differentiation for him and for his message, if I can put it that way, that I think is very relatable to some of our business owners, that as you're listening, there may be a specific problem, a specific pain point that you are touched with, or your typical client is touched with, that as you affirm how to serve that, how you bring the solution to that, you may find a way to begin to define what differentiates you in the marketplace. Right. So I'm not going to go much longer. You guys are the pros, but I have to say I was inspired as I listened to that interview. Said, you know what, that sounds like a lot like something Jim would say.
Well, I think the interesting thing is as a small business and you're growing, most of the audience, I would imagine, know who their best customers are. And to be able to serve those best customers and really understand why they enjoy doing business with you is really important. Because at that point, then you can start to find customers that mirror or mimic those customers. So you just keep scaling it. And I'm a fundamental believer that, people are more similar than they are different. So if you can start to find those people who are similar, then you can start to expand your business. And then at that point, part of another growth strategy would be then offering more products to that same group, some ancillary products.
Yep, and just to spin off what Jim just said about going from the niche and then finding ways to scale your business and grow, is when you're identifying those scaling opportunities and those upselling opportunities, it's really about listening to your customer and being able to find ways to speak to them. I always say speak to your buyer, as Christy said, or your customer, your client, whomever, your fan, however you want to define that person who uses and wants what you're offering. Be able to speak in their language and be able to do it so that your product and your service resonates with them, and they want to hear more from you. They're wanting to seek you out. And yes, if you niche down and you understand who that person is, and I keep on going down to a person, because even though it's a group of people, you need to act like it's one person and get to know that one person intimately so that they become your best friend. And that way you can know what they're thinking before they're thinking, or at least know how to ask them and feel comfortable saying, what can I do better? What can I do differently? Or what did you like about that? I really appreciate you taking on my product, because then that information can go into the content that you are putting together in your marketing campaign.
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's a really great way to start to think about your content as well. And I know that personal testimonies of your best customers, it's gold for selling your products, right? Because people are a little suspect of businesses anyway. I think just over time, people have generated that suspicion. But if a customer actually is the ambassador of that product, I think it's an outstanding way to really take a look at how they speak about your product, how they speak about your service, and then start to put that into your marketing materials, because that will, as Nerissa said, start to resonate with other people. And it's a really great opportunity. And conversely, another way to get really good content is take a look at ratings and reviews, on your web pages, on your social pages, and mine for gold there. There's a great opportunity to get really good content. And then if you really want to get sneaky, you can look at the ratings and reviews of your competitors and only look at the 1-star ratings and reviews. Find out the pain points that their customers are having with their businesses, and then position your product or your service better, so it is a better alternative choice to go with you than to have that frustrating experience with your competitor. So take the time to look over all of that information. And that's the beauty of digital marketing is, we have so much information at our fingertips and so much insights that it's pretty easy to cultivate that into a message and then have it actually pull pretty hard for you.
Yep. And I do want to speak one thing more about the content before we move into the next slide, just to support what was said. From a content perspective, just be sure that you're not delivering the same message across the same channels, because different marketing channels, whether it's social, whether it's on your website, even if it's inside a physical presence, like in a brick and mortar or at your actual location, the messages should be different, because the people who are engaging with you in these different marketing channels are slightly different as well.
And then one more thing. So here's the rough thing, or the kind of the funny thing. we could speak for hours and hours around content. But the one thing maybe that we'll close off on the content, and if you have any questions regarding content, please reach out to Nerissa or myself. But make sure that the content that you create is purposeful. Make sure that it is driving to an action that you want your audience to take. In other words, we call them a CTA, or a call to action. So if you're in social media and you want to create some content, make sure that it's driving, that their response will drive them to the website, or it will drive them for more information, or it'll drive them to purchase, or it'll drive them to like it or share that piece of content. But what we want to do is make sure that each piece of content that you take time and effort to create is actually moving somebody through that sales funnel. And conversion is everything. And so, keep that in mind, as the content that you create has to move them along that journey towards an ultimate purchase, or another metric, and we can get into that in our measure area.
Yeah, this is where there's so much that we're just glossing over right now because time is limited, and I'm like biting my tongue not to just dive even deeper. But what Jim was, oh yes, Bernard.
Well, it's interesting. I'm hearing these things, and I'm reminded, when all's said and done, I think the people that are watching and listening, you want to earn more money, impact more people, and hopefully have more time on your hands. And I think that to understand that a lot of the nuggets of wisdom that are being shared, and some of them are so subtle, if you're not really listening, you'll have had a $1 million idea pass by you today and not even realized it, is the fact that part of that pathway is, again, knowing who your target audience is and what their pain point is, and then being able to meet them where they are with a strategy that complements the fact that you have a pain that I empathize with, I have a solution for, and I'm going to create a quality user experience for you to get comfortable with our company, with our offering, with our product, in such a way that not only will you choose to engage one time, but you'll actually want to be engaged for a long time. And so for many of you here, understanding and learning how to craft your message, then be able to understand the proper strategy for conveying that message, and then translating that into a pathway of a progressive series of yeses. Yes, I want more of this. That's going to make all the difference along your journey. And we've got two pros here to help you. And I want to drop this here because some of you may be listening and saying, all right, this is a lot of charts and things and details, and man, I just wanted to be able to generate more sales. I don't know how to do all of those things. The great thing is this: you'll get more information shortly from the SBDC. Jim is a consultant through the SBDC, and we provide free consultation to small businesses. So for some of you, you may need someone to walk alongside you to talk through, what does this look like? Nerissa and her company, you'll hear more about this later. She has certain things that she does. So I'm just giving a plug to let you know that you're going to get information not only in terms of what is important, but you're also going to get some information as this webinar progresses on how you can take the necessary first steps and incremental steps towards progress. And that's what we want you to have, progress.
Absolutely. And so at least with coming full circle and looking at this circle, take a picture, but we're going to move on to the next page, how everything from the strategy going into the, now I just forgot what was on the circle, but going into the audience and the channels and the content. You want to, like, the next question is like, how do you know that your efforts that you put into your marketing are supporting those objectives? Those objectives are what are the choices, the decisions that you had to make when developing your strategy. So for example, I keep on going back to audience, but are we targeting dog owners or non-dog owners? That's a choice. And one of the goals for your key performance indicators could be the number of dog owners that have trafficked it to your website and clicked on a particular link. So, and all of your metrics that you're looking for online from a digital marketing perspective, they can be from social media, they can be from your website, they can be from video views, they can be from a specific call number that you had set up for tracking purposes, and vanity URL. As Jim had mentioned earlier, there is a large array of ways that you can collect data and metrics in order to track the performance of the campaigns that you're putting into play. And being able to take that data, plus the qualitative insights that you're gathering along the way to see if your strategy is being met, and if the campaigns that you put into place in support of that strategy is being supportive. That way you know if you need to stop doing something, if you need to tweak or modify, or if you need to completely, pivot and readjust. Because, but this is where, from a digital marketing perspective, unlike with TV or radio or more traditional marketing, you have to wait a little bit longer before you can collect the data and be able to assess and make adjustments as needed.
Yeah, absolutely, Nerissa. And I think one thing that we need to really understand is there's a discipline here around setting goals and then going all the way through to kind of measuring, the kind of the result of your campaigns. But there has to be a discipline in really understanding, fundamentally what it is that you want that campaign to do, and be brutally objective on what that is, and be unbelievably disciplined and to measure if it actually happened. I've seen through my career, I've seen, marketers go to our analytics groups in the past to say, hey, what did that campaign do? Only to be answered, with the question of what did you want it to do? And that happens all the time. I mean, I think in the digital space, it's no longer, let's do some really neat creative things and see what happens. It's more, let's take a look at the data that we have, the insights that were driven from those data points. Let's develop a campaign to drive results in a certain way, and then let's make sure that we have a methodology in place to measure that. And once you have those things in place, then you can start to take a look at your reports, which is information, and then you can really start to use that information to develop the insights to actually make decisions from. So it is disciplined. It is it kind of takes some of the fun out of the marketing piece, because it gets more into kind of science. And let's face it, we're turning into a MarTech society right now, where we're blending this marketing and this technology piece. But what I think happens is we're going to get really more focused in what we're doing. We're going to be much more efficient with our spend. We're going to be much more efficient with our resource allocation to actually set these things up. And hopefully, if we do all of that right, you're going to see the results that you want.
I'm reminded here, and I appreciate all these comments. And again, I hope people remember you can follow up and engage with both of our presenters today. I'm reminded of a business scenario years ago. I was involved with a company that did a lot with regards to the acquisition, renovation, and resale of real estate. And my function at that time was the acquisition part. And I remember having 4 or 5 different campaigns going. And one day it finally dawned on me, even though I'm talking to a lot of people, I'm engaging with a lot of people, I inadvertently discovered that our metrics hit a certain demographic of client, that 70% of the properties we acquired came from this niche. And so then it became a matter of how do we more effectively market to that niche? Because if that's where 70% of our results are coming from, and yet I may have 80% of my marketing efforts in these other areas, this is a time looking at analytics, looking at data, looking at metrics, looking at what's actually converting, to make a financial decision to say, you know what, we can stop investing quite so much money in these other areas, double down in the area that's driving our target demographic, and allow us to serve them that much better. And I hope that some of the people that are listening, that's part of what you're gathering here, that the extra effort is going to take for you to put into marketing with a strategy, with a clear, concise message, it's going to produce an opportunity for you to be more knowledgeable, have greater command and control of knowing where your marketing dollars are going and how that's producing revenue for you. And so, you know, the segment we're dealing with here is data leads to insights. What more insights would you like to highlight today? And that could be for either one of you.
One of the things that I definitely want to make certain that business owners go into, and it might not be quite an insight, but people forget to create a benchmark when it comes to data. And so one of the things is to make certain that you know where you're starting from. That way you can see how far you have gone or what you have accomplished, because sometimes the data doesn't grow in leaps and bounds, or the performance indicators are different or in a different spot than what you would have expected. Because sometimes, going back to that earlier question where someone says, oh, I'm targeting everyone, the data will end up letting you know that perhaps everyone really isn't your market. And so if you're able to see, okay, this is where I started, but as I'm honing in to the messaging and the channels that really work for my business and for my buyers, it's not quite everyone as I initially anticipated. It's actually a subgroup of everyone instead. So be sure to know where you're starting, set those goals, make certain you know your audience so that you can decide on the appropriate channels to focus on, and then write marketing messages or content that really resonates with them.
You know, it triggers a question for me as we're talking about, because I think what you're describing, the person who's in business and they want to be able to sell to everyone, because I've got the best mousetrap ever. I've got the best slice of bread that's ever been made since bread got sliced, and I want to go ahead and make sure everybody buys it. And it can be a hard conversation with someone to ask them to narrow their niche. How much more can you speak towards how well engaging with an advisor, a professional, can help them have comfort and gain confidence with making that type of narrowing of their niche? Would either of you be able to speak towards how important an advisor might be to help someone with that?
Yeah, I think first of all, an advisor plays a kind of an interesting role. One, they're objective, and they can come in and they can take a look at what's happening in the business, you know, based on the record that the business owner is keeping, and can just ask, you know, the basic questions of where, you know, the business is coming from and where they're losing business. I mean, let's face it, every bucket has a leak, and you know, what we're trying to do as marketers is you try to patch that leak. So and you try to keep as much water in the bucket as you can. So, you know, I think by having somebody come in and just taking a look at their, you know, what's happening transactionally within their business, how they're marketing, who they're targeting, I think that, you know, it can give some new light into something that maybe somebody's tired, you know, or tiring of, or just comes into, you know, the store or the office and they kind of go through the motions. And I think it's really good to kind of be, you know, kind of disrupted for a moment, think a little bit different, and I think an advisor can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I support that wholeheartedly. There are viewpoints and perspectives that someone who isn't as close to the business will see that the business owner or the marketing director or whomever might not see because they're in it every day. There's also, from a consultant perspective, we'll be asking you a lot of questions and getting you to think about topics and subjects that you might not necessarily think about all the time, because once again, you're either too close to the subject or this just isn't your area of expertise, so you didn't know to ask or think about X, Y, and Z. And then also from a consultant perspective, we can guide, we can advise, or at least in one Epiphany's case, we can also help you implement on those strategies as well. If you don't have the resources or the knowledge I won't say knowledge, but the resources and the skill set already in-house.
Yep.
That was,
Christy.
yeah, again, Nerissa, you tee things up so beautifully. This works so great. So you just said we can help you implement those strategies. So, Jim, what's the difference between what the SBDC does versus what Nerissa does, and how can we work together?
Yeah, so I think, you know, if you take a look at this slide that's up right now, the SBDC has put a program together called Focus 4. It's a business management program comprised of 4 different modules: vision, strategy, execution, and cash flow. And let's just say, for example, that I would work with a small business through a strategy session. That would take the business through a session that would actually build the business strategy, not necessarily the marketing strategy. And I think it would be a great partnership for Nerissa to come in and work with us to actually flesh out that marketing strategy. That'd be a classic
Great.
approach.
And that was something one of the audience members asked was, can you give a short step-by-step process to creating a strategy? And I answered it for you. I said, yes, come to see us and we'll do that for you one-on-one, because it's unique, I think, for everybody. So the other
we'd
thing
love to help out.
Yeah, and Jim, one of the things that Jim does pretty regularly is reviewing proposals for paid advertising agencies or marketing companies who are the business owner will pay a marketing agency to achieve certain outcomes, right? They talked about what are your goals? How do you measure success of the campaign? What is the return on investment, right? You're going to pay for this strategy so you can say no to other strategies. You're not getting the billboard on I-75 this year because that you don't know what that returned. Instead, we'll do something different. Jim will review that proposal or help you make sure that what you're trying to achieve is stated clearly, and the contractor is actually communicating to you clearly enough and you're speaking the same language. Because sometimes we've seen those proposals and they're up here when what the business owner really needs is much more foundational, and you're getting ahead of yourself. So Jim will help put you together and manage this relationship with the consultant, the paid consultant, so that you're both speaking together. And we call it the translation service.
So here's my perspective on that. I'm a pretty frugal guy, and I am of the mindset that every dollar that I spend has to work really hard for me, whether it's in entertainment, whether it's in an investment, whether it's in anything. And I take a look at that and I use that same philosophy when I look at proposals that marketing companies give to small businesses. And I ask the question all the time: for every dollar that you spend, how hard is that dollar working for you? And if it's not working hard, let's not spend it. What's that?
I'm like, is it land and snowman?
Yeah.
We've had a conversation about Jim's frugality. It's legendary.
Yeah.
And I also want to be able to interject as far as like how the alley-oop of sorts goes from SBDC to a business such as mine, One Epiphany. This is where the helping out, the assisting with the business strategy and how that runs into the marketing strategy, but then also being able to translate, because that's what was just mentioned. There are times where business owners have marketing aspirations that are beyond their current stage, which is fine. We can definitely work up to that. But this is where they have, I want to be, using Christy's example, the Oreo, but they don't necessarily have the Oreo budget yet, and that's fine. This is where One Epiphany is able to work with you as long as we understand what you're wanting to achieve, which Jim can assist with some of that, and then bring One Epiphany in to help with the marketing to make certain that your business goals are properly supported by the marketing goals and the strategy. And then, like I said, we can help out with implementation of that strategy as well. One Epiphany helps out with search engine optimization, email marketing, online advertising, and so much more. So it's more, think of it as, I keep on thinking alley-oop, but basketball for whatever reason, but like the
That's right.
assist. So SBDC sets it up and we can take it to the basket.
Oh, I love that. That's a perfect analogy. And with that, I'm going to ask our Fifth Third panelist, if Ryan is still on, to say how Fifth Third can help support those goals as well. And then so hopefully we will wrap up right on time at 1 o'clock, if that's okay with all. Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. Great content today. You know, I really like to hear about it when you think about, if anybody's heard of the 5 C's of credit. You know, those are things that the bank is going to assess when you come to us to look to borrow money. And this topic definitely falls in there under the character portion, right? So we want to know, you as a business owner, what's your strategy? What's your strategy to grow? What's your marketing strategy? These things all go into, how comfortable we are, making an investment into your business. So great topic there. And so me and my role in my peers, as business banking relationship managers, our role is really not to be, order takers and just be there when you need an application submitted or things like that, right? If you've got a good banker who are staying close to you in your business, understanding these things, this last year is obviously a good example of that. And the closer we're able to say to you and your business and share the things that we're hearing going on in the market, I think that's probably where we can help with this is we can share ideas not only of products and services. It doesn't always have to be about selling something that the bank offers. It's in our best interest to help your company perform well, right? So whether it's connections that we've got in the marketplace that we can make a referral to, or things that we're seeing in similar businesses or trends, I think that's where we can contribute to the strategy for you.
Awesome. And of course, working capital, right? A lot of these strategies to implement, we're going to probably, it takes money to make money. So I think we think of Fifth Third often. And as Ian posted in the Slack channel, in the chat box is a link to last week's session on the 5 C's of credit. So Ryan, thank you for teeing that up. There's a nice little softball for us. On our last episode, assessing your capital options. So if you didn't get a chance to attend last Thursday, take a look at the recording. And next Thursday, please join us for our 5th episode in the Bridging the $1 Million Gap series. Your CFO, your Chief Freedom Officer. This is all about finance, looking at financial freedom. So we're not going to talk about, it's a CPA on a CPA, but I'm going to try and pull them out of the weeds and not talk about bean counting, but how you can hire a CFO or a fractional CFO to make your business run a little more smoothly for you and give you the confidence to step away and read your financials and understand your numbers to make decisions for the future. So join us next Thursday at noon. And thank you again to Fifth Third. Thank you so much, Nerissa, for joining us. Jim, it's always a pleasure. And Bernard, preach, brother. So join us next Thursday. We'll see you on the flip side. Ian, thank you on the backside. I don't forget about Ian too. You're running our machine wouldn't work without Ian here. So
You get that right.
Have a good afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Keep an eye in your inbox and you'll have a link to the recording and all of the resources and materials we discussed this afternoon, so you can sign up for future webinars and no-cost business consulting and review the materials from Nerissa and One Epiphany as well. Have a great one.
Bye-bye. Take care.